I'll field any questions.
I got one. We've already got a mineral lease, and a gas lease on the property. Does it have a strange on getting a solar lease on it? Because
It could. Is it a working oil and gas lease?
Yeah, there's wells drilled now, but they want to drill.
They have the right to come back and drill. It depends on what your oil and gas lease says. You have to look at the two side by side, because if they have the right to come back in and drill more wells, most oil and gas leases that I negotiated had a period of time, usually 5 years, for them to drill all the wells. Then they had to stop. Okay, the number of oil and gas leases that I had signed by people before would make me think that somebody in this room, especially Chautauqua County. Chautauqua County has 6,700 drilled wells, okay? It's that many drilled wells in Chautauqua County. They had the right for a lot of the leases that were signed to come in for the 5 years and drill wells. And then because they own the underground rights, they have the right to use whatever is necessary on the surface to access the underground rights, okay? But nobody's signed any leases that I know of anywhere in New York State in the last 10 years. I mean, I can't even think of one that's been signed. I haven't reviewed one. I used to review about 50 leases a year up until 10 years ago. But I think it's a read your lease. I think you'll see they have to drill within a certain period of time. They're called offset wells, and they have the right to put offset wells in within a certain period of time. Yes?
Well, after listening to you, you have to beware of a lot of stuff. So to make a long story,
I just hit the highlights.
to make a long story short, if a man were to lease 20 acres to one of these companies, what do you possibly charge to handle all this? Your firm. Ballpark, well, if it's $500 or $50,000.
I'd like to say 50,000. What I've learned is, here's what's happening with my oil and gas leasing and my solar power leases is I end up having a lot of repeat customers, okay? If you're the first one that calls me and it's a lease I've never read before, I've got to charge a little bit more because I don't know if I'm ever going to read another one. But if you're the second one, because I do negotiation for you too, I go back in and negotiate to get the lease rate. Normally the first person that calls me pays $1,500 and I can't make any money because I spend a lot more time than that. But by the time I do a second, third, fourth one, I end up getting closer to even. So I usually charge $1,000 if I've seen the lease before. And I tell you, because, you know, I don't want to charge you $1,500 if I've read the lease and I know what's in the lease. I'm going to have to reread the lease a little bit to make sure they didn't change it on you as opposed to the last time I saw it. But you really need me to tell you what I think is things that you need to know about, okay? And what I think I can negotiate for you and what I can't, okay? It's not a question of can I go and negotiate every term you need to negotiate. A lot of these leasing companies take the position that if you want to start negotiating with them, they'll move on to an easier target, okay? And I don't want to mislead anybody here. If you become too hard to work with and they've sent out 1,000 of these or more, there's probably easier people to work with. I have found out from my oil and gas leasing days, there is a world full of people that will sign a lease without even reading it, without consulting a lawyer, without doing anything. And a lot of those people are the ones that came back and tried to sue the companies for having their leases binding their property for a long period of time after the moratorium started going in effect, and they found out what the fracking prices were going to be. But, you know, that's up to those people. Most of the people who come to a seminar like this want to know what they're signing, okay? And I just taught you everything I learned in law school. And I guess most of you probably don't feel like you feel comfortable reading it and doing it yourself. So people do come in and seek out our assistance, and we do this work on a regular basis.
Did you ever hear of Cypress Creek?
Yes. When I have read your lease.
Okay. Now, do you think you advise your family attorney that you've been working with for 30 years, who's probably not familiar with this, we're probably better off jumping to someone like you who's been doing this thing, right?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that your family attorney can't do it, but in my oil and gas experience, most of the family attorneys never got the level of involvement that I got into, and so they didn't feel competent. So a lot of the family attorneys, when they get called, call me and say, I have a client who's got this issue, would you look at it for my client? And I look at it for whether it's a direct referral or referral through another lawyer. If your lawyer feels competent to do it, they'll tell you. But I think a lot of the lawyers, you know, it's just, I don't know how to explain it. If you don't do it a lot, it's a lot to learn.
That's my theory.
Yeah.
And he had to go to the golf outing tonight, or else he wouldn't be here.
But I would just say, you know, depending, you know, I'm not going to rule it out because I know that there's a lot of competent attorneys out there that can do the job if they want to put their mind to it. Other questions? Yes.
I have a bunch. And they sort of circle around the real property tax law, section 47 section. You gave us the list of Chicago County school districts. Do the towns also have the ability to opt out?
The towns do too, but I didn't have any towns in Chautauqua County for some reason that opted out. I can't explain why. Every other county I have a few towns and a few school districts. It's actually oftentimes weighted more towards the towns than the school district. Chautauqua County, I knew somebody was going to ask this question. Didn't have any towns listed, and I can't explain why. But what happens is there's, you know, something called the Association of Towns. There's also something called the Association of School Boards. And if the Association of School Boards sent out a circular to opt out of this thing, hurry up. They all do that, okay? They do what their association says. And that's my guess. Now, I don't know that for sure. Nobody's called me up and said that's what happened in Chautauqua County. But I'm betting it was somebody got a memo to opt out of this as soon as it came out.
How about Erie County?
That was my.
Well, you only hear about your county.
Read slow.
Is there a time frame that they have to opt out?
Pardon?
Is there a time frame that they have to opt out?
No. No, they have to pass a local law. I don't think I read the statute, I didn't see any opt-out. Because you want me to read slowly, I'm actually going to use the mic so you can hear me. I bet this isn't the last county I'm going to get asked about. Okay. Erie County. Towns is Boston. The school districts are Gowanda, Lackawanna, Pioneer, and Silver Creek. I don't understand Lackawanna because it's a city school district and the statute says that it exempts out of the cities. Yeah. Any other counties people want me to read? I'll just do Cattaraugus for the fun of it. How's that? Cattaraugus towns are Ashford and East Otto. School districts are Allegheny Limestone, Cuba Rushford, Ellicottville, Insdale, Forestville, Franklinville, Frewsburg, Gowanda, Little Valley, Olean, Pine Valley, Pioneer, Portville, Randolph, Salamanca, and West Valley. Again, a ton of school districts. Other questions?
Having the companies go bankrupt, what do you do with them?
Okay, that's an excellent question. What happens if a company goes bankrupt? I guess there's a couple things about bankruptcy that you have to know. The trustee stands in the shoes of any of the creditors that are out there in the bankruptcy world. Technically, the trustee in bankruptcy owns the solar panels now, okay? Their job is to see if they can find a buyer for the solar panels. If they can't, they abandon the solar panels, okay? Now, you would think that if somebody puts a solar array on your property in the year 2016 that costs $3 million to put up, that's what it costs, about $3 million to put it up, that would be worth something to it, somebody, even if there's a bankruptcy. Well, that's not the case, okay? The case is that the only reason the company went bankrupt is something happened adverse within the industry, most likely. Because these are smart people that should know how to run a business, and they do what's called modeling. They model the financial picture going forward 15 years. They think they can afford to do this at a profit. I don't think this many companies would be moving to New York to do solar leasing if they didn't think they were going to make a profit. Some of them are not going to make a profit. Many of them might not make a profit at the same time, just like the oil and gas industry is going through right now. Well, what's the other rule in bankruptcy? The other rule in bankruptcy is they can get out of any lease within 90 days, okay? All they have to do is reject the lease. The trustee in bankruptcy can reject what's called an executory lease. That's not true for equipment purchases where it's a capital lease, okay? This is not considered that. This is an executory lease. So if they can get out of the lease and abandon the property, guess who has to clean up the mess? And there's no way you can negotiate that into the contract. Because whatever they sign as a bankrupt party, the trustee is the one who can break it because they don't agree. Trustees agree to not spend a penny. The only way a trustee spends a penny is if they get $1 back. That's the only way they do it. Other questions? Did I scare you all? Now, I mean, let's be honest though. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake here, okay? This is not chump change by anybody's imagination. What they're not promising to do, if you get a notice from Cypress Creek, is the one that tells you exactly your property size, and you have sugar plums dancing in your head if you get the letter, and it comes, of course, U.S. Express mail in a special package, you think you just got knocked, the door just got knocked down by a millionaire. Well, the actual fact of the matter, it's a very generous offer, and it's probably going to hold up for a while. It's probably going to be a good added value for a while if they make the payment. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong. The moratorium, the town could turn against you. You could have rules against having solar arrays after you make a commitment. I'm advising all my clients not to cut their timber until they get a firm commitment. So there's a lot of things here that you have to think about, but use your head, use your smarts, go to meetings like this, read the Farm Bureau's information, and make an independent decision of whether the costs and benefits, if the costs outweigh the benefits, don't do it. If the benefits outweigh the costs, you can do it. It's not just a cash decision. I explain leasing in country property this way. It's a lifestyle. The lease will change your lifestyle. If it changes it in a way that you want it to change, because now you have more money, and it's in a place you don't particularly have use for it, that's a good thing. If it changes it for you in a bad way, like you have glare coming in through your back window from the solar panels, and you don't want to look at it anymore, that's a bad thing. So you have to decide for yourself what's good or bad for you, and weigh the consequences of signing a solar lease to see if it's right for you. I personally will tell you that other than fracking, which could have been very valuable, it's way more valuable to have a solar array on your property than any of the oil and gas leases and the vertical drilling wells that I saw, because these are bigger dollars and they're more guaranteed for a longer period of time. It looks like it's a better deal.
I have a question.
Sure.
A few actually. So, what about in the case of a landowner wanting to do the site clearing on behalf of the financier? Can they, bump up their lease payments in some cases, or are you able to negotiate that out?
Say that another way.
So, just to explain a scenario, I work for a solar installer. I work with financing companies that want to offer landowners this deal. And then sometimes landowners come to me and say, I've got a bobcat, I want to take down all the trees, and I want to get more of a kickback for my land lease, Are you able to negotiate that in some cases?
I haven't had that experience yet, okay? It's, that is a cost of the, it's called site clearance and site prep, okay? If somebody was to internalize the cost of site prep, that would be value added to the company. I believe you can negotiate more for that. I haven't had that in a solar lease situation. Today I got off the phone on a pipeline client case where I'm trying to negotiate a pricing break for work that the landowner is willing to do on the roads. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on it. So I believe there's no question if you can save them money off the bottom line, you can add money to the top line for you. Okay? And will they do it? I can't say, but certainly I would be willing to negotiate that if I was given that situation. But there's a bigger problem is at what point are you doing site clearance? Is it when they approve the due diligence, or are you doing it when you sign the initial offer sheet? Because if you do it when you get the initial offer sheet, there's a lot of things that can happen between then and there, and you don't necessarily have the utility company saying they'll give you the space on the lines.
Yeah, I would never advise that until we get back an initial study saying that this is, feasible.
Viable.
Then that kind of brings me to my next question about zoning. So, I'm sorry, I got here a little late, but as far as, you touched down on agriculture, I'm dealing with another customer it's half commercial, half residential. It's not a super large, plot of land, so, would it make more sense for them to subdivide and then install on the commercial? Because
Yeah, that's a fact-specific case that I don't answer in seminars like this because whatever I say would probably be wrong, because I have to go back and look at your specific situation, what zoning laws you're looking at. I will tell you, I have clients in residential agricultural districts that have been approached, which I believe are eligible for putting solar panels in, and I have one client that have, it's all on a commercial piece. So I know you can put it on both, I just don't know in your town, in your situation, and I don't want
I just didn't know if it was best practice or.
it's too early to tell what best practice is. This is a little new for best practice yet.
Do you guys have any dealings with brownfields?
I haven't had any brownfield deals myself, but I understand from my reading that the brownfield solar areas out west are considered one of the best uses of brownfields that they have. It's, in fact, they're recommending it for a lot of other areas. I haven't seen it go into full effect. In Buffalo, we have about 2,200 acres or something like that of registered brownfields under the state registration system. I would believe all of those are eligible for solar arrays. Yes.
What is brownfield?
Brownfield is a area that has considered a demonstrated environmental impact that has been identified by one of the state agencies. I gotta be careful here because there's some weird things like coastal resources has one of the abilities to designate contaminated areas. But and we have a whole brownfield list in New York State of where the brownfields are, and they're usually associated with old industrial properties near cities. Usually, okay, it's not what you're thinking of, which is the dead hayfield in the fall. Swampland is not. That's wetland. Yeah, that's different. That's a different classification.
Can you put them on wetland?
Probably not, would be my guess. And the reason is you have to put in a pretty firm anchoring trees, and I think that's where part of this solar development is going to play out. Is they're going to find that there are soils that will not withstand the combination of holding the panels in a certain tilt, because they have to be tilted a certain way, and these snow levels. Okay, when we get a 4-foot snow, that's a lot of snow weight. You know, if you hear building codes at 40 pounds per square foot. Well, you know, if you have a 10 by 6 foot panel, that's 60 square feet. You put 4 feet of snow in there, that's if you get 4 feet. What about the 7 feet we get? Okay, you remember in the 7 feet of snow what happened in Buffalo? Buildings collapsed that were built to code. Collapsed that were built to code because they know they've never been built for the snow weight. So anything with unstable soils, I think, will not be built on. None of the solar companies are going to build in unstable soils. And a lot of the due diligence, in addition to finding out what the utility capacity is for the additional solar power, are going to be looking at ground conditions. They'll probably be doing test wells to find out what the underground conditions are.